Please welcome to the stage right now, Coursera's North America Public Sector Leader, Sam Combs.
That's a lot of pressure to live up to. I feel that's the best announcement I've ever had. Well, it's nice to see everyone. Thank you so much for letting me join today. I'm curious, so I'm going to make time at the end for questions. So as I'm going through my AI Plus Careers story, I'd love for you all to be thinking about questions. I want to save about 10 minutes to just talk about things that this group is interested in. But first, I want to say a special thank you to the SCSP team. At Coursera, we're incredibly proud to be partnering alongside SCSP. Launching this micro-credential today, the AI plus AGI national security micro-credential has been a tremendous amount of work on the SCSP side, on the Coursera side. I'm going to put my plug in now. I thought there was going to be a slide, but there might not be. If you haven't opened your email, the one you used to register for the event, this morning you should have gotten an invitation to that micro-credential to be able to take it through the SCSP program. My plug is, if you haven't looked yet, press the blue Join Now button and join that to take advantage of it. It's an awesome course and an awesome credential. Okay, when I think about the premise, and I love this AI careers concept, when I think about my own AI plus careers story, the place that it started could not have been more different from the place that we're standing in today. In this conference center, surrounded by industry and academia and public sector leaders, the place that my AI plus careers journey started was as far as you could be from this convention center in downtown DC. Mine started about 10 years ago with a knock on the door in the middle of the night, and I was serving as an intelligence officer in the Air Force, deployed to a really remote location in West Africa. And that knock came on the door, and it came from a duty officer. The person that was deployed with us, his job was to stay up overnight and to listen to the radio, answer phone calls, basically see if anything had changed in the area that we were operating in. Most of the night, there was never a phone call, there was never anything on the radio, but that night there was a change. We got word that there had been a pretty significant attack about 500 meters away from an airfield that the pilots that I was supporting were preparing to fly into in a handful of hours. And so 2 a.m. comes around and I get a knock on my door. I was the only intel person at this operating location. And it was my job then to scramble for the next handful of hours to pull together as much information as I could, to pull open source information, classified intel reporting, call people back in the US, call people that were on the ground locally near the attack, in order to compile that volume of information, begin to analyze it over a handful of hours leading up to when ultimately the pilots would walk through that door, and it was my job to prepare them to go on that mission, to go on that operation, to resupply special operations troops that were on the ground in that area. And when I think about that moment 10 years ago, and I think about that experience and connect it to this conversation, to me there's two questions that I think about most. One is, how would having access to the technology that we have access to today, to AI, to generative AI, to AGI, how would having access to those tools and capabilities today, would that have transformed how I did my job 10 years ago? How would it have reshaped how I accomplished that mission that I was tasked to support? The second question, though, is really the question that I think has shaped my AI plus careers journey since leaving the military a handful of years ago. And that question is, even if I had access to that technology and those tools 10 years ago, would I have had the skills to actually leverage the technology effectively in order to accomplish the mission that I was set to accomplish? And that's really what my focus has been, my career transition has been all about. My transition from service into private sector, being at Coursera, has been focused on providing an answer to that second question, on making sure that people that are in a similar position to the one I was in 10 years ago don't have to answer no. They can say, yes, I'm equipped and have the skills and I'm ready to leverage technology in an effective way to address the mission that I'm set to address. And so as was mentioned, I have the opportunity and the privilege to lead our public sector business at Coursera, where we're partnered with federal agencies working alongside the DoD, the intelligence community, Department of Energy, working alongside state governments, local governments. The missions, the organizations, the people that we are supporting, they change. But there is this common thread that I see across every government organization that we're working alongside, and that is this need to transform the public sector workforce to make sure they have the right skills at the right time to accomplish the mission that their organization is set and tasked to accomplish. And so tying that role into this event today, as you can imagine, I think it comes as no surprise. Over the past 24 months at Coursera for Government, the thing that has dominated every question or every conversation that I've been a part of, the thing that's dominated every conversation my team has been a part of is governments coming to us asking about AI, asking about Gen AI, recognizing that they're in a moment where they need to transform their workforce and do it quickly in order to keep pace with the rate of change that we're seeing across government, across industry, and globally. And it's not just something that's isolated to Coursera for Government. At Coursera, we benefit from having a global platform. So we have 170 million people that are using Coursera every day across the world. And one of the things that we've seen is that there's a demand for AI content and AI upskilling unlike anything we've ever seen previously on our platform. And so when we look at the data, a handful of years ago at the end of 2023, we were seeing a handful, maybe 1 to 2 enrollments in AI content every minute. When you fast forward to today, that's almost 10x, and now we're at about 10 enrollments happening every minute, focused on AI and Gen AI content. And so the demand is tremendous. It's not just public sector, it's globally. What's unique in public sector, though, that government agencies are really looking to Coursera to help support and help provide is what they're asking for. And they're really asking for 2 things. The first is a training solution, a training capability that is highly scalable. They recognize that this need to transform the government workforce is not an isolated issue, right? It's not something that only affects a handful of people in government. It's something that requires us to upskill and reskill the public sector workforce at scale and do it quickly. So scalability is the first piece. But the second piece that governments are coming to us talking about is we need to deploy training at scale, but we can't sacrifice mission specificity. We can't sacrifice context relevant to our organization and our mission. We need to make sure that the training that we're deploying is put into the context of the mission and the organization that we're supporting and that we are. And so the phrase that we use at Coursera is specificity at scale, is allowing organizations to build and deploy training programs that are highly mission relevant and highly scalable across organizations. And when I think about the work with SCSP, that really is, to me, the foundation of what they've been able to build. The AI and National Security course that they launched in March of this year, that's focused on providing a broad understanding of AI and where that technology is going, but putting it into the specific context of national security and how it applies to national security practitioners. And the AI plus AGI micro-credential that was released today builds on that concept further. It's once again taking that foundation of specificity at scale and really delivering on it. And so when I think about my own journey, when I think about the partnership with SCSP, for me it goes beyond the work that we do at Coursera, the work that we do at Coursera for Government. For me it's highly personal. I think a lot about what SCSP has been able to launch and deliver, and to me it's a resolution to that question that I opened with, right? The question of, would I have had the skills to actually deliver on my mission 10 years ago? If I answer that honestly, 10 years ago the answer was no. But with partnerships like SCSP, with the work that they're doing, with the micro-credential they're launching, I think it's giving people across the government, across industry, students, career transitioners, no matter where you're at in your career journey, it's giving us an opportunity to answer yes to that question, that people will have the right skills to apply them in a national security environment. And so to close, I think one thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently is, and this is not, once again, not a surprise, especially in this room, is the rate of change that we're seeing driven by technology today is unlike anything we've ever seen historically. And typically when you hear that statement, it's coupled with some sort of benchmark data. They'll talk about the AI adoption curve, how AI is being adopted more rapidly than any other general purpose technology, much faster than the telephone, internet, electricity. Or they'll talk about monthly active users on an enterprise platform. For me, the thing that's been most interesting over the last 6 months is it's transitioned from benchmark data and quantitative analysis to now actually being able to to feel the impact, to feel the rate of change, right? To be able to actually see it with our own eyes, how it's changing careers, how it's changing roles, how it's changing jobs. And for many of us in the workforce, being able to see how AI is actually having an impact on our own job, on our own career, on our own professional trajectory. That sort of change kind of goes from the abstract on a chart and a graph and gets really, really personal. And so the question is often, what do we do, right? What is the answer to keeping pace with this rate of change? And it reminds me of a quote that one of my mentors would say often when he was asked a similar question. He would say, if a person or an organization wants to keep pace with technology changing as fast as it is, they need to make sure that their rate of learning matches the rate of change. So I couldn't be more excited to be launching this microcredential alongside SCSP. I think it plays an important role of being able to help solve for that rate of change and rate of learning, keeping pace and staying consistent. And I appreciate you all spending time at nearly 4 o'clock on day one of a long conference to join this conversation. I'm going to pause. I think I'm basically at 10 minutes, and I will hand it over to the group with any questions. Everyone's like, I need to go. I need to go to happy hour right now. Yep, so if you didn't hear the question was, a lot of times there can be hesitancy inside of government, inside the national security ecosystem to adopt AI, and the question was, what is Coursera doing to help maybe move through that objection and help organizations more quickly adopt the technology? I'll actually point to the very first thing that SCSP built and launched with Coursera, their AI and national security course back in March. I think that was one of the core value props of that course because it not only explained what the technology was and the state of the technology at a high level, but it also brought practitioners from across government, retired government professionals, current government leaders, brought them in to talk about use cases that they are using AI to help solve in very low threat, non-threatening ways. Think about things like, how do I quickly draft a memo in a consistent format that could be ready to be presented to a Secretary of Defense or a national security advisor? Bringing these use cases to life that don't feel like that we have to cross the burden of highly sensitive data and instead could be used to solve very typical government workflow challenges that every government professional faces. I think that's one of the ways that we can address the question. I think the SCSP course does a great job at it. Yeah. Yeah. Say the last part one more time.
Can you share like a specific example of where Coursera works with the government on educational curriculum or like utilizing them, helping the government with curriculum in their country?
You want an international example? Okay. So the question was, can you give an example of how Coursera is being used with a government internationally to help train and retrain their workforce? I think one example that we're really proud of is we've had the opportunity to work alongside the government of Barbados to do a nationwide reskilling and workforce transformation initiative. And so the government came in and looked and recognized that they had a handful of priority industry sectors that they were really focusing on to continue to strengthen their hospitality and tourism industry, but also to diversify beyond hospitality and industry to other industries that could be growth drivers on the island. And they partnered with Coursera to do what you described, which was build custom training pathways aligned to those specific industries and those specific industry requirements, and help provide something that was a really scalable training and reskilling initiative that was designed not to be deployed in isolation, but deployed across the country to upskill and reskill tens of thousands of people in Barbados. Great question. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, so the question was, do we have any information on things that are on Coursera tied to AI and healthcare? We do have content that's focused explicitly on healthcare and public health. I would say one of the areas in on our government business that we've seen be a significant scope or a significant footprint for our own partnerships is across the public health ecosystem in the U.S. And so we're partnered with the Department of Health and Human Services and a variety of different sub-departments there. We're partnered with a variety of different state and local public health agencies. And what we typically see them doing is taking Coursera content on a technology like AI to build broad literacy across their workforce on that technology, and then pairing that Coursera content with maybe their own internal content on how it might apply inside of a public health use case. And so using some of the capabilities and the tools we have on our platform to be able to blend those two things, the domain knowledge and domain expertise that a department might have on a specific topic, coupled with the content and the courses that Coursera has on a technology like AI. Yeah. Are you able to share what you're interested in doing?
So I'm interested in partnerships, so exactly being like a person who translates what the public sector needs to the private sector. I was working in international development before,
Okay.
so trying to learn how to leverage that experience.
Yep. Yeah, so I think a handful of things, and I might go off script. Yeah, so the question was, what do I think the private sector would value most in terms of content and credentials, and for someone that's coming from public sector and making a transition into the private sector. And so I'll blend my answers here. I'll speak both from a Coursera lens, but also from my own experience going through a career transition from military to industry. I think on the Coursera side, there's a handful of things that I think you could focus on. One is any of the content around AI that goes beyond kind of high-level literacy and starts to get into application. So think prompt engineering, specific use cases where you can actually talk not just how does this technology work at a high level, but you can actually start talking about use cases and application of the technology inside of industry, I think is one important aspect. The other piece inside of Coursera is there's professional certifications, so think of these as like an actual credential aligned to an in-demand role. Those are other things that we see oftentimes people who are making a career transition be most interested in. I would say I think that for me, the two most important things that were at least helpful for my own career transition, one is really it's an exercise in storytelling. Like I think very often people that I've spoken to that have gone from government into industry try to don't do enough work focusing on translating their experience into language that a private sector hiring manager can understand, right? And they kind of leave it up to the hiring manager to do that translation for them. And instead you have to flip the script and be explicit about it. You just have to say like, this is my story and I'm gonna say it in terms that wouldn't make sense to government, but I'm gonna do that in order to have it resonate with the private sector hiring manager. So I think one is storytelling. And then the second piece that I would call out is, as you think about a transition, are there ways to not have to leave your past public sector experience totally in the rearview mirror? Like, are there ways that that public sector experience doesn't just become an adjacent part of your background, meaning like strong leadership, good work ethic, high discipline, right? Common terms that at least in the military we heard a lot. And instead can your government experience be central to your role inside of that private sector organization? Can they look at you not just to say, hey, I love the government background, but also the work that they did specifically in government can be a business driver for us. It helps with the translation and it helps you take that experience and not feel like you have to like move away from it and instead be able to put it front and center. Yeah. Anything else? Are we good? Perfect. Thank you all.